Welcome to the Apex Mindset. I'm John. Really glad you could join us today.
And I'm Lucy. Yeah, it's great to be here, ready to get into some fascinating ideas.
Today, we're looking into something pretty incredible, a trait that really seems to separate people when things get chaotic. It's the power of presence of mind. We've been looking at some material that suggests staying calm under pressure isn't just, a nice quality to have. It's actually a strategic weapon. It's what we're calling the Apex Mindset.
Right. And our goal today is to unpack the principles behind this strategic composure. We'll draw on some really interesting historical figures and also practical advice. We want to help you understand not just what it is, but how you can actually cultivate this superpower in your own life. It really can change everything.
Okay, let's dive in then. What exactly are we talking about with presence of mind or composure? Because initially it sounds a bit like, being cold or robotic.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction to make right off the bat. It's not about being emotionless, not at all. It's more about developing the mental discipline to stay clear-headed when the pressure's on, seeing reality for what it is, acting strategically, and, crucially, turning a potential crisis into an opportunity. Think of it like an internal compass.
An internal compass. I like that image. It keeps you pointed in the right direction, even when everything else is swirling around. But why is it so strategically important, beyond just feeling better yourself?
Well, the material we've reviewed points to some key reasons. First, chaos. It creates this mental fog, right? It blinds most people. Fear narrows your attention, clouds your thinking, leads to rash decisions. You miss the big picture.
Okay, so panic makes you tunnel visioned.
Exactly. But composure, that acts like a spotlight. It lets you see patterns, find leverage points, spot hidden options that others just don't see because they're caught up in the emotional storm.
So it's not just about not panicking, it's about actually seeing more clearly because you're calm, like having mental X-ray vision in a crisis.
Precisely. And here's another strategic layer. Your calm is almost magnetic. In a crisis, people don't just admire composure, they actively look to the calmest person for guidance. You become an anchor. It builds trust.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. If you're the one holding it together, people naturally gravitate towards you. You become the leader by default almost.
Right. And maybe the most vital point, it protects your long-term goals. Emotional reactions, they rarely solve the root problem. Often, they create new problems down the line. Staying composed helps you keep your eye on the prize, protecting what really matters in the long run. It's about that bigger picture thinking.
Okay, so we've established why it's so critical. Let's make this concrete. You mentioned historical examples. Let's hear about some of those moments that really show this power in action.
Absolutely. Let's start with Winston Churchill, May 1940, World War II. The situation was, well, it was incredibly bleak. Nazi forces were rampaging across Europe, Britain was facing invasion, and public fear was immense. Some were even pushing for negotiation.
An existential threat, basically. The survival of the country was on the line. Hard to imagine more pressure.
Exactly. But Churchill, who had just become prime minister, projected this unshakable calm. His speeches, his whole demeanor were resolute. It wasn't just bravery, it actively shaped national morale. Now, what's really interesting is that behind the scenes, he had huge doubts, wrestled with the situation immensely. But publicly, he was this voice of absolute determined defiance. His composure under that kind of pressure was crucial in helping Britain hold on. It was a deliberate choice, a strategy.
That's fascinating. The difference between the internal feeling and the external projection. It sounds like a performance almost, but a necessary one.
A necessary and strategic one, yes. His calm wasn't denial. It was a tool to focus the nation on resistance. It shows composure can be cultivated. It's a discipline. Then let's look at Vice Admiral Lord Horatio Nelson. Battle of Copenhagen, 1801. This is described as a hyper-aggressive tactic. Nelson, famous for his fiery personality, was actually second in command to Sir Hyde Parker, who was much more cautious. Parker was hesitant, seeing the strong Danish defenses, the tricky waters.
And Nelson, being Nelson, must have been itching to get into the fight, right? Clashing with the cautious boss.
Oh, definitely. He was burning for action, totally disagreed with Parker's caution. But, and this is key, he channeled that energy. He presented a detailed, logical plan. He argued they could use their mobility to attack from the south, basically dismissing Parker's worries about sandbars and wind. And then came that iconic moment, Parker's signals for withdrawal. Nelson famously puts his telescope to his blind eye and says, "I really do not see the signal," then hoists his own flag, engaged the enemy more closely.
Wow. Just ignores a direct order based on his own conviction and assessment. What does that tell us about composure, especially coming from someone known for being fiery?
It's a brilliant contrast. Parker's caution, the material suggests, wasn't just prudence. It hid weakness, a fear of making mistakes. It led to paralysis, indecision. Nelson, despite physical limitations and impatience, compensated with this intense determination. He doubled down on his confidence. As our notes put it, being more careful is not what we need. That is just a screen for our fear. Nelson's focus, his double resolve, countered that. Confidence intensified can overcome obstacles.
Okay, these are powerful examples, but they involve massive historical events. How does this apply to us, in our regular lives, and how can we actually build this skill? It's not just for admirals and prime ministers, right?
Absolutely not. It's a superpower for everyday life, for modern leadership, for navigating work, relationships, everything. Think about business today. A market crash, bad press. Panic can spread like wildfire. The leader who stays calm, gathers facts, communicates clearly, they preserve trust, and often find better solutions.
Right. And even in smaller things, like a tough negotiation or a personal conflict.
Definitely. In a tense negotiation, the composed person can read the room better, respond thoughtfully, not give too much away emotionally. In personal arguments, reacting with anger just escalates things, doesn't it? Staying calm lets you listen, clarify, guide it towards resolution. And think about high-pressure jobs, healthcare, aviation. They train specifically for this, for keeping a cool head, because panicked decisions can have terrible consequences.
So it's universally applicable. If we want to cultivate it, where do we start? Is it just deep breaths, or are there more concrete steps?
Deep breaths are actually a great starting point. Slow, conscious breathing tells your nervous system it's okay, physiologically calming you down. It's a quick reset, but there's more. Simulate pressure. Practice handling difficult scenarios in low-stakes ways. Role-playing, visualization. It trains your brain not to freak out when the real thing happens. Builds resilience.
Like mental drills. Makes sense. Preparing the brain beforehand.
Exactly. Another key thing is reframing. Instead of seeing a setback as a disaster, consciously ask, okay, what's the opportunity here? What can I learn? Shifting perspective cuts down fear. Also, focus on the process, not just the outcome. What's the very next step you can control? Stay grounded in that instead of getting lost in what-ifs. And don't underestimate taking breaks. Stepping away, even for a minute, can reset your clarity, stop you from making a reactive mistake. Which actually leads nicely into another example, Alfred Hitchcock, the detached Buddha tactic. People expected the master of suspense to be, intense on set, but he was famously calm, almost nonchalant, sometimes even napping between takes.
The master's suspense was Zen. How does that work? Seems like a contradiction.
It does, but the secret was his preparation. Before filming even started, he planned everything with incredible detail. Visualized scenes, detailed shooting scripts, blocking, cameras, sets, costumes. He essentially directed the entire movie in his head and on paper beforehand.
Ah, so his calmness wasn't indifference. It was supreme confidence born from preparation. He'd already solved all the problems.
Precisely. There was almost nothing left to react to on set because he'd anticipated and planned for it. He established control in advance. That foresight is maybe the ultimate form of presence of mind. Your mind doesn't go blank because you've already thought through the challenges. And that calm is contagious too.
That's a powerful lesson in proactivity. Okay, the material also gives some specific keys or exercises to toughen our minds. Let's get into those practical strategies.
Right, let's break them down. First, expose yourself to conflict. George S. Patton is the example here. He had this deep fear of being seen as a coward, so what did he do? He deliberately went to the front lines, under fire, testing himself repeatedly. The idea is, confront your fears directly. Familiarity breeds, well, not contempt, but less anxiety. Overcoming that fear builds real confidence. For him, a big motivator was honor. Losing composure meant disgracing himself and his men. People depend on you.
Like Aesop's fox and the lion. The first encounter is terrifying. The second, less so. The third, you can almost ignore it. Confrontation diminishes fear?
Exactly that principle. Second key, be self-reliant. Ulysses S. Grant's early career struggles, including issues with alcohol, partly stem from dependency and maybe a lack of self-control. But later, during the critical Vicksburg campaign, he became incredibly self-reliant, personally scouting terrain, analyzing intelligence, crafting orders, trusting his own judgment above others. The insight. Dependency makes you fragile. You need to build your skills, trust yourself more, maybe even consciously overestimate your abilities a bit to compensate if you tend to underestimate yourself.
Building your own internal resources so you're not reliant on external factors that might fail you. Makes sense.
Then there's a fascinating one. Suffer fools gladly. Think of the Duke of Marlborough dealing with allied generals who were timid or indecisive. He'd listen patiently to their fears, seem to indulge them, but privately he'd work around them, never letting their negativity or incompetence derail his plans or his composure. He stayed outwardly cheerful.
That requires immense patience and control. It reminds me of that story about Caesar tripping when he landed in Africa, but instantly turning it into, I embrace you, Africa, controlling the narrative, controlling the reaction.
Perfect analogy. It's about preserving your mental energy. Don't let fools drain you. Detach emotionally. Treat their nonsense like a minor annoyance, not a major disruption. Staying cheerful is actually a strategic defense. Okay, another strategy. Crowd out panic by focusing on simple tasks. There's a story about a Japanese tea master challenged to a duel he knew he couldn't win physically. He was terrified, but he calmed himself by meticulously performing the entire complex tea ceremony ritual. Focusing intensely on each small, precise step, crowded out the fear, restored his composure. The idea is to force your mind onto something concrete, repetitive, calming. A focused mind has less room for anxiety. It creates a space for clarity to return.
That's clever. Using a familiar ritual as an anchor to pull your mind back from the brink of panic.
It really is. Then, unintimidate yourself.
Yeah.
The composer Shostakovich had to face Stalin, terrifying prospect. He consciously forced himself to see Stalin not as this terrifying dictator, but just as a mere mortal. He spoke normally, didn't show fear, and apparently Stalin, who fed on fear, backed down. The insight. See the person behind the title or the reputation. Imagine their own flaws, their insecurities. It helps you maintain your mental balance, stops you from being overwhelmed by their perceived power. And finally, develop your Fingerspitzengefühl, that German term, fingertip feel. Erwin Rommel exemplified this. His speed and intuition in battle weren't magic. He devoured information technology, terrain, he'd fly over it. This is men's morale. He knew things deeply. That deep knowledge allows for faster processing, more intuitive leaps. It's about getting inside the skin of the situation. Practice making quick decisions based on that deep understanding. Let your mind move fast.
So it's this blend of deep knowledge and practiced intuition. This isn't just about passively staying calm then. It's active awareness, readiness.
Yeah.
What's the end game here? How do we weave all this together?
The goal isn't just to react calmly in a crisis, but to make presence of mind your default state, an everyday condition. Like FDR, known for his calm during the Depression and WWII, but also in daily interactions. Practically. It means taking that pause before answering a tough question. It means when things go wrong, taking time, minutes, hours to review options calmly, not just lashing out. Keep your long-term goals literally visible. Write them down. It helps you resist short-term panic. It's about building this into your normal way of operating.
Making it a habit, a fundamental part of how you approach things.
Exactly. There's also this Japanese concept, hara no aruhito, the man with center. Hara is like your core, your gut. Someone with center has cultivated self-discipline, has calm judgment, is essentially ready for anything. They don't react erratically, they act decisively, quietly from that stable core in an emergency.
That sounds like real mastery. Grounded, centered, not just managing fear.
It is. And here's an interesting twist from the material. Learning comes from the times you lose your composure. Those moments expose your weaknesses. They're invaluable lessons. The idea is that someone who has never lost it might actually be more vulnerable when a truly unexpected challenge hits. Great leaders often stumble, lose their nerve, and then become stronger for regaining it.
So failure isn't final, it's feedback.
Yeah.
And this implies we can use this understanding strategically against others too.
Well, yes. While you work on your own composure, you can also think about how to disrupt your opponents. What throws you off balance? Try imposing that on them. Surprise is potent. Find their emotional triggers, their weak spots, and apply pressure there, a double dose, as the material puts it. Ultimately, when everything's chaotic, calm isn't just peace of mind. It really is power. Mastering presence of mind means you don't just survive chaos, you can actually learn to use it to your advantage.
Wow. That was really illuminating. A deep dive into presence of mind. It's definitely clear this is a skill we can all actively work on.
Absolutely. It really changes how you handle challenges, big or small. Maybe something to reflect on is, how often do we let immediate emotions drive our actions instead of our long-term goals? How might cultivating this presence of mind change how you approach the next big decision you face?
That's a fantastic question to end on. That's all for this exploration on the Apex Mindset. If you found this valuable, please do take a second to like and subscribe. It genuinely helps us create more content like this for you.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Apex Mindset. We really hope you feel a bit more equipped now to find your own center, especially when things get chaotic.
See you next time.